Welcome back to the Educator Wellness Revolution podcast, and we are super excited to have this incredibly important conversation today about the role of the assistant principal in educator wellness and in wellness. And we are super excited to have two DC assistant principals to have this conversation with us today. Sara Arranz, who is assistant principal at both Military Road Early Learning Center and Thaddeus Stevens, and Christina Morado, who is assistant principal at formerly Roosevelt STAY, now Garnet-Patterson STAY Opportunity Academy. So welcome to both of you. And we'll start just by asking you to just introduce yourself and just give a little overview of your experience, both in education and then your interest in educator wellness. And AP Arranz, we'll go to you first.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I'm Sara Arranz, 26 years in education, originally from Spain. I taught in England, then I went back home and I taught in Spain, and I've been 16 years in DC public schools. I taught, in middle school, elementary, and then when my son was born 13 years ago, I decided to move to early childhood, where I became, a lover of early learning. And from a teacher, I went to a teacher leader, to a coach. Then I moved to central office to be a coach too. Then I left for a minute to be an assistant principal in a charter school. And then I came back home to be an assistant principal in DC public schools. My interest in educator wellness starts with myself. I do know that those of us who take care of people need to start by taking care of ourselves. I do much better when I take care of myself. I've been trying to find always ways how to do so. Sometimes it's little things, sometimes they are bigger, but I decided to start doing this with my team. So I also see the impact on others. When I share these tips, or when I share something I did and it made a change or, improve the quality of my performance, I'm happy to share those things. So at the end of the day, it's about feeling better and taking care of ourselves so you can take care of others when serving in education.
I love that. Thank you. AP Morado.
Hi, my name is Christina Morado. I have taught in New York City, Los Angeles, and now DC. I was a social studies teacher by training, but sort of hugged the humanities side of things. So taught a lot of literacy and English also. I was a teacher for a long time, and then when I joined DCPS, I was an instructional coach really early in the instructional coach role, which I think is integral in schools. And then I think this is my 13th year as an assistant principal. Always in alternative settings, I guess, if that's a phrase. I was at a bilingual K-8 for 10 years, and I've been at an Opportunity Academy for the last 2. Similar to Ms. Arens, I would say that my interest in educator wellness has 2 pieces. I think one is I'm interested in process, in like sort of how we do things and why we do things. And so that's just like sort of probably one of the larger lenses that I use to like view the work. I also think that personally, I was a founding teacher in the Bronx at a school that was incredible, and I worked and worked and worked and worked and worked until I couldn't work anymore. And my exit strategy was to get another job that was like slightly less demanding. And I think that like that was sort of the norm, like for like the people around me and my peers. We worked endlessly, and I feel like that. And then I moved and I was really unhappy, right? So it was like I needed something that would have allowed for more sustainability in a place that I loved, as opposed to, and I was young, so, but also like, a good chunk into my career. And so I think that and so I've always wanted, to Ms. Arenz's point, like to have something that helped support balance in a place where that's not always possible. And I really think that like since the pandemic, like just the ecosystem of the school and the assumptions that we make about what educators can provide and should provide has come into sharper focus. And so I, have a yoga teaching certificate, and it took me a long time to get it. I only actually got it a few years ago, but I always thought that that would be such an incredible thing to have in schools. Um, and it was like a really beautiful thing to do with students that wanted it, right? Like it wasn't required, it was just a class that we offered. And so I just think that like thinking more about the whole person and what goes into educators, so that then they can provide, um, is important. Education is a profession that requires a lot of expertise, experience, and heart, and that isn't possible to do without also thinking about the people that are doing it.
Yes.
Thank you both so much. You both bring so much experience in education and so much perspective that is I'm already really inspired. And in our partner school work, we've worked with a lot of assistant principals, and I think that's because assistant principals have some leadership capacity to like make decisions within a school building, but if they're not the top, which is sometimes, as you know, a principal is a very overwhelmed position in many ways. So, but we've also noticed that assistant principals look really different in different schools. Like they take on different responsibilities, and there seems like a lot of opportunity in that and also challenge. So how do you personally frame your role as an assistant principal and your responsibilities? And what do you hope that other assistant principals might be thinking about too when framing their role? And let's go to you first, Chris.
Sure. Yeah, so I think that that's super accurate to say that a lot of us, we see our roles in very different ways. And I've always worked in programs where there's multiple assistant principals. And so I also think that that allows us to sort of like fall into certain niches. I really think about my role as kind of like living in the pocket. It's a role that is around like supporting and facilitating adult learning so that faculty and staff have the tools that they need so that the student experience aligns to like mission and vision of the school. I don't know though, because every day is like, there's pieces that are like sort of you can expect, and then there's pieces that really change from moment to moment. And so it's so much coordination with like so many different partners and stakeholders, right? Like students and families, and a lot with teachers. And it has to do with like isolating priorities, right? And like leaning into that. But I also think that moves a little bit, like there's some like movement there. And I think maybe the hardest thing is that so much needs focus and attention. And so you have to sort of decide what's top. And, in the program where I am currently, we know that people feeling supported and feeling heard and feeling seen is really important. And so we're like trying to figure out how to do that well. Sorry, 1 second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Arranz, do you want to jump in?
Gracias.
Sure. It is always fascinating hearing different assistant principals. We assist a lot. My case is very different because I'm the only assistant principal in 2 buildings. So when my principal is in one building, I'm in the other one. So I'm quite a flying solo most of the time. I will say that actually my staff just created a International Women's display this morning, and they posted all the women that work in my building with our picture and one word that represents us. And they wrote, and it filled my heart because I'm about empowering. And they wrote, AP Arranz Empower.
Yay.
For me, AP is to empower. To
Like that.
empower my families, to empower my kids, to empower every single person in my community. It's about the people. I always say that I love kids and I love people who love kids. So for me, it's about all the people who can be in a school. By no means I'm the smartest one in the room. I don't have always the answers, but I'm very good at teamwork and really bringing the people to a common vision So what I do is support, like I said, enable people, empower. My responsibility is, oh my goodness, although I love habits and I love, like OneNote, and I have my calendar and everything, like Morado was saying, it starts with the day by getting early in the building so I can open the building and have the coverage, which is one of the biggest tasks these days. Do we have the people to open the building? I post the coverage and then I go to every single room to say hi to everybody, because I rather say it personally and say, hey, how are you today? And maybe, how was your birthday yesterday? Or how's your mom doing? Or you were sick, how are you? So the check-in personally makes a difference. And also as I'm walking around and checking in the building, if operational waste is ready to open. So I also do operations. Are we clean and open? Ready to open. Then, after that, it's about instruction, supporting coaches and teachers. I love doing arrival. I'm always present at arrival. During Black History Month, we started playing music at arrival, and it was, different genres from Black music. But it was so amazing that now we continue. And we started with women. This month we play any woman who were singers. So we try to embed that happiness when people are arriving. I see my kids arriving. I say hi to every single person so they know I'm here. Then after everybody's in place at 9, I do my round to check that, are we good? Are we ready to start? I'm just making sure that instruction is kicking off. I check on my calendar and see what is for the day. And if I have an immediate meeting, I will join, like a LEAP, which is a professional development, or MTSS, which is one of my favorite things. I'm coordinating MTSS. And it's, providing different supports when the general supports are not working. And then being in the classroom as much as I can. I protect instruction a lot. So I'd rather have the meetings like this one in the afternoon when my kids are napping, because in pre-K 3 and 4 we nap, or they rest. So I can have the meetings in the afternoon, always, trying to be present in the room. And when I'm in the room, I want to check that the culture and the climate feels good. So I want to see evidence of that. And like if I can jump and help on anything, I want my staff to make sure that they know that I'm there for the kiddos. So if one of my teachers is having a moment, I will say, don't worry, I'll continue the story. Or if a child is having a moment, I will say, oh, you can talk to Miss Sarah, because I'm AP around for most of the people, but for my kiddos, I'm Miss Sarah. So they feel like I'm also a team member. They can come and talk and be taught, or just hang out for a minute.
You've named so many things already, and like super concrete, like including like guard the instructional time, which I think is just, so important. I heard this workplace guru talking about kind of general advice for leaders, right? And he said that like, if you're a leader, everybody wants to be the person who's serving the clients, right? In that case, it's the students, right? In a school. And so that's where you come from. You've both been in the classroom. And so it's like constantly you want to keep close to the classroom. But when you're a leader, really your job is not to serve the clients, it's to serve the people who serve the clients. And that's a priority. But an AP is kind of in that middle ground in some way, right? Because you are still expected to do a lot directly with the students and to support the teachers. And a lot of that is kind of building the culture of the building. So we pay a lot of attention to kind of the culture and climate that we create for students, but not always explicitly to the kind of climate we're trying to create for adults. So I'm curious just how you see your AP role in terms of creating a positive adult culture at your school. And then just let's focus on the question of like, what gets in the way? What is that culture you're trying to do, you're trying to create, and what gets in the way? So Sarah, maybe I'll start with you on this one.
My approach is always that any little thing matters. And I'm telling you, and makes a big difference. So I do those check-ins when I go around and I check on everybody personally. They love that. And I'm going to be honest, like you said, we are the APs and we just keep going and going. And I don't know you, Morado, but when they stop and say, and how are you, AP? It was one time last year that I started crying because no one asked me how I'm feeling. And that day was so authentic when this teacher asked me, and actually I was going through, well, we're all going through life, so it's not about that, but it was so like, how am I? So I think that those check-ins, building the relationships, for me is relationships, and then rigor or anything else. Because when you have the relationship, you can be doing an observation and a conference. And like I just call a parent that we've been going through, some serious plans and stuff with her child. And I call her, and because I have the relationship, she was so open to receive feedback. So knowing their love language. And let me share this with you, because one of my favorite times is when I was having a staff meeting, and I've been trying very hard these days to start every staff meeting with some wellness. So I bought a lot of wellness stuff, and we do something that is related to wellness. And one of the things I told them is that sometimes we do recognitions in the weekly memo or shout outs, but not everybody's love language is words of affirmation. So I said how comfortable they felt sharing with us what is their love language. Because some people, for me, is quality time. I don't need the words. I need quality time. Like, you are with me. You're looking in my eyes and you are with me. Other people's are acts of service. So we created, I brought hearts, of course, the teacher and me. Sometimes I wear that hat. I made these hats and they wrote their name, their love language, and they put it at the door. So now everybody owns it. It's not about AP or principal doing this. Now they know their love language. I model a lot by example. I model by putting so many apples and oranges on my table so they know I'm very healthy. I model by having a lot of steps. I model by saying, everything I do, and I can share later about how I take care of myself. But when we talk in DC public schools about the whole child, I think that Morado was saying it before, it's about seeing the whole teacher in order to serve the whole child. I cannot ask my teachers to give the best if we don't see them and where they are. I remember a staff member, I had a meeting and I was like, yeah, but is this the best for the kids? And I loved it because I've been so vulnerable about, please give me feedback. And I've been so exposed to ask them feedback before giving it that they feel comfortable with me. And this staff member said, yeah, but what about me? Is this the best for me, AP? And I stopped for a second and I thought, well, let's talk about this right now, because I'm always saying, is this the best for the kids? Because we always say that we repeat that. I'm always very vulnerable. When I'm taking a mental health day, I tell them, AP won't be available tomorrow. So I'm sorry, guys, I'm not going to answer your messages. I hope you do the same. I will be out with my 2 kids. I'm a mom of 2. What it gets on my way, it will be that I wish we could have more of those days. Budgeting for sure. We don't have the budget in my building, so I'm going to be very honest. It's a lot of out of my pocket. Like, it's a social worker month, right? I just go lunch to my social worker, but it's on me. I don't mind saying it, but I wish we had more budget for these kind of gestures, more time and more buy-in. I cannot force adults to believe in the importance of wellness. So when I bring up wellness and I see it's like, oh, another thing to do, I don't want anybody feeling like that. I want them to understand that this is your temple, that this is important, that what you consume, but not only intake in food waste, but also how do you consume the reading, the social media, whatever it goes into your body causes stress or it could cause peace. So I try to figure out how to support, and I always seeking for advice or for ideas, because I think we don't have enough time, money, or buy-in into wellness these days.
Sarah, can I go back to the mental health days for 1 second? You think it's important that they specifically be mental health days, that we're naming to people that that you have these days to take for your own mental health, and then you were talking about kind of modeling that?
Yeah, certainly. What I'm trying to say is, let's say that I have a person who's going through something and needs more. I'd rather support that person to feel great every day. And if there is a day that they can miss, so let's say it's a day that, I don't know, if it's a resource teacher, she doesn't have a lot of kids to serve that day. If it's a PD day, and please don't kill me this about the school. If it's a day that they are not really impacting that severely to the kids, I'm the first one saying, take that day. I still don't understand why we have to be every single day in the building. And I'm sorry, because sometimes I have very unpopular views. Even administrators, when we could be sometimes where there are no kids in the building, doing the same somewhere else, because it happens in other states. I don't believe in the killing us with a lot of time. And I believe that if we support people, they will be honest enough to say, I want to be here at my best. And I'd rather know when you're taking off than calling out. So yes, it's the same that when you have a cold, you are not physically ready, you may be not mentally ready.
Yeah.
Let's name it. And it's not even, I don't want anybody to feel ashamed for saying, I'm not ready, because I've done it. And I will continue doing it. When I'm not ready, I'm not giving my best when I'm here. It's a disservice to my community. I shouldn't be here if I'm not feeling my best.
Yeah, thanks. Chris?
So the question is sort of like, what are we doing? How do we support adults, and what gets in the way?
Getting in the way. Yeah.
Yeah. So I hear what Miss Arranz is saying about, like, take the time. I think that that's really important. I would say that that is my biggest learning. That is my biggest learning in the last 4 years. That like the work is in figuring out how people can take the time. And when we're able to plan it, that's all the better. I think what's hard is that we can't always plan it. And should we have to choose like taking time versus like our personal learning? Like I think one of the things is that I would love for people to have both, to have time for personal learning. I think that that exists in many, many professions. Like go learn, like that's a great thing. And like you should be able to also have time when you know what I mean? Like those are different types of time and they feed different things. And so like in the future, like I would love to see that education can have both, right? That we're not choosing to take a day because it has a smaller impact on my partner teacher or my colleague or whatever, but that whatever. I would say that from a personal perspective, when I had a sick little person at my house and I would continue to work, I realized, to Miss Arenz's point, that I was like modeling something that I had no business modeling. Like it's fine for me to work, but I do not need to be on a camera still participating in meetings, right? Because I am somehow suggesting that that's what someone else should be doing too. And so I do think about that. I think the things like in the biggest picture, I think the thing that makes supporting teachers hard, because I do think that that is the work. And I think that I answer that question, like, what is my role so different now, like 12 years into being in school leadership versus when I was first in school leadership? I think if you asked me when I was a baby AP, I would have said something along the lines of like, trains going, things happening, people learning. Like I just would have like ticked off all these things, and so much more of it now is about supporting the people so that they can be the most actualized version of themselves that they can be. And for me as an AP, I often sort of like mold my support to the person for the way that they need it. So some people need to like know what's coming ahead of time so that they have time to process and think about it. Some people want you to tell them the thing, tell them exactly what the expectation is, why you're doing it, and like lay it all out for them and then leave them alone. Some people like, and like everybody needs a different thing. And I feel like as AP, this is like the part of the job that's like so bizarre. It's like figuring out what each person needs. And I actually think I always thought at first that administration was so different from teaching, but I think that like figuring out what will work best for who you're supporting is the part of the work that's so much like teaching. But I think a lot of things get in the way. Like I was saying earlier, I really see the school as an ecosystem, and so we're really connected to each other. So I think that sometimes there's feelings of letting people down and things when we can't show up fully. I think that makes taking care of ourselves hard. I think that there is a mishmash of calendars that really impacts like what's happening in the school year and our personal, the school year for adults is 10 months and also for students, but then there's like a whole other calendar of how things should go from the district. And I think that things push and pull and a lot of things sometimes happen around the same time. Um, and I'm laughing, but I also think that that's super interesting. I also think that like I think if you put my parents, who are both in their early 80s in school, they would totally recognize it. And I think that's weird because I think the world is really different from when my parents were in school. And so like I I think that like we uh, are like sort of chipping away at things in this way that I'm not even sure that that's necessarily the best way to do it. And I'm not saying my practice is different. Like I am like always trying to figure out like where's the wormhole? Where's the work? How can we like make all these things happen? But I do think there's some bigger questions around like how can this be a sustainable profession so that people are learning and feeling fulfilled, so that that's what they show their students, you know? Yeah. I work in a program where the adults that have the resources to create strong connections are the people that have classrooms with students in it, right? Because my students are older and they are choosing whether or not they're coming to school. Like they are their own agents. And so like I have never, I mean, yeah, I've never seen more clearly how much taking care of yourself impacts your work as like being in this program. And this is probably the 5th school that I've worked in the last 24 years.
You all are just sharing so many important things, and you're amazing people, and that's the reason that we asked you to be here to talk about this. But really, when we meet with any leadership team, like I think they're amazing people who are there, and we learn so much. And I really see the humanity of people who are in leadership roles and how challenging that is, and how impossible it seems sometimes. And then we go and we talk to staff members, and we see their humanity, and they're so amazing. And then we hear all about the divides between the two sides, about how the admin are frustrated with the staff are frustrated with the admin, and just this tension or this divide feels more pronounced in some environments, but I don't think we've encountered a partner school where it wasn't there and it wasn't commented upon. And so I want to know what you think of, what do you think causes this tension, and what do you wish everyone could understand more about the other person's job and roles in their day-to-day life that could maybe ease this? And let's go to you, AP Arranz.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I do believe that teachers and my staff likes accountability, and they like to work and come and serve. I do believe that sometimes what is lacking and creating the gap is the lack of support. I believe that they like clear communication. I always say the 3 C's, crystal clear communication. I believe that the only way for them to see what we do is engaging them, and again, for me, empowering them. So I'm a very team player, and my principal knows, like, okay, let's bring these people for the personal community. Let's bring these people to talk about this data. Let's have them, because once we all own it, we understand what we're doing. So for me, I think that the tension starts when there is no clear communication or responsiveness to what is happening. When we don't know, we don't know. And not knowing starts, with biases, with assumptions, with doubts, with no trust. In order to trust, I need to be able to know what we're doing here. And even though sometimes Morado and her principal and mine will have to make decisions that maybe are not liked to everybody, I always say also that we don't sell ice creams, so we cannot make everybody happy. But I also know that if we empower the staff to be involved, and we do practice good teamwork, and we create our mission together, I think that we start filling that gap. We are always communicating leaders, even if we don't say anything, we say in a lot. One of the things I train myself, because they gave me the certification in Georgetown, and I loved it, and they trained me about communication and how we really perform as leaders, and how they're watching us at all time, and how we send in signals. Staff likes to be valued, to be heard, to be listened, and to be part of all the decisions. So for me, it starts since summer. In summer, for example, last summer, I created the summer buckets. So by gathering data during the year about things that we should improve, I started sending emails in May. Hey, do you want to be part of the learning retreat? And I call it a learning retreat. Then tell me in which of these buckets you would like to chip in. And it was so much, because I made it virtual. You want to be on the beach and join? It's okay, as long as you give me your voice. But everybody gave voice. They gave their input. So if now we're moving forward with this, we created it together. And it's okay to revisit, and it's okay to say it's not working. But as a leader, I don't find that friction. And I think it's because I'm very crystal clear communicator. And I always say, this is where we are. And unfortunately, today I don't have the answers, but push me. That's another thing I read for Steve Jobs. Jobs will come with a very crazy thing, and he will say, convince me right now that we shouldn't do this. So sometimes I come to my team and I say, okay, I have this very crazy idea for this class. Everybody go, tell me why we shouldn't do this. So if you engage in those conversations and everybody sees that you are a human being trying to get to the same place, I do believe that it's about together. It's about the people again.
It's something we really do coach leaders on, is about how to let staff members into your thought process too. So let them understand the decision making, because oftentimes leaders are like, well, we can't do that because of this. And we're like, well, have you told your staff members that? And they're like, no. And like, okay, well, just, it's okay to say you can't do something, but you have to let them know why. And that piece of communication, even if there isn't a clear answer, can be really helpful for building that trust and transparency too.
Yeah, I have experienced more tension between faculty and staff and administration, you know, where the vision and mission is less clear. And I think that that connects to what AP Arranz was saying also, which is that like we fill the gaps, right? And so if it's not totally clear why X is happening or why we're doing this or why this priority or why this thing can't happen, we fill it in in an absence of a why, like we fill it in with something. And so I think that like communication and bringing people in is really important, and like understanding that like you're not bringing people in necessarily for agreement, right? But you're bringing people in because, as was stated really early on in this conversation, like one person doesn't have all the answers, nor should we want one person to like have all the answers, right? And so I really appreciate when people are disgruntled. Obviously, it is my preference for you to like name it and say like I don't like X or like I wish you didn't Y. Because the other ways that we do it again is open for interpretation. I sit in all the meetings on my phone. I come late to everything. Like, right? And so you're expressing, like I get that like we're not aligned yet, we're not on the same page, but like the what is not clear. So like I was actually just in a meeting just now, and the team that we were meeting with, the admin was meeting with, was like, why are we here? And I was like, thanks for asking. Like, let's 100% talk about that, because they were like, is something coming? Is something, you know, in the copper, like da 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 da. And it wasn't that at all. It was just that like we hadn't met in a long time, and there were just all these things that we wanted to check in about, like preemptively, as opposed to like coming at it after the fact. But I was like, what if we had this whole meeting, the whole time everyone was like, something's coming, it's gonna be crazy. I totally appreciated the like the ask, even if it, you know, wasn't on the agenda, like, you know what I mean? So like I think that like we can't expect people to jump in and like sort of get with the program and support the things if we can't define what are the things and what's really important. And so, and I think you can have a million best practices around reflection and around all kinds of things that we know are important to do as a community. But if that vision and what we're here for isn't there, so people can decide like this is what I want to walk towards or this isn't, then like I think it everything has the potential to go sideways. And that is, in my experience, like a significant like root of tension between faculty and admin.
Yeah, I like the focus on just like this is how we communicate with each other about what matters to us, and also, you know, AP Arranz, you know, saying the idea that you say like, here's a crazy idea I have and tell me why we shouldn't do it. I mean, part of why communication I think doesn't work sometimes is or that tension exists, is that teachers feel like people, if they consult them at all, it's like, please give us feedback. And it's very general and unspecific, right? And it's just like, we want to hear from you, and you know, we have office hours, or write me an email or something, right? And what they want a lot of times is like, hey, this particular decision is happening right now. What do you think about this, right? Or I have this idea. What do you think about my idea? Because I think that specificity makes people feel more included. And I just making sure that the majority of the communication is communication about something that feels mission aligned, right? Like I remember communication with some of my APs over time where it was like, the communication is more along the lines of, hey, we need you to change the words on your board from, we're not using objective anymore, we're going to say learning target now. And like, would you please take a lot of your time to do that? If it feels like it's that kind of stuff, it's like, what are we here for? What are we really doing? And if it feels like it's aligned to the thing we all care about, I think that creates a different kind of relationship too. We have two more questions for you. We're going to do a little lightning round here with the last two, so quick answers. And AP Morado, you said before, like if someone hadn't been in a school in 80 years, it might feel very familiar to them. So that's the spirit of this question, which is that education is changing, and that doesn't mean schools are changing, right? But schools probably should be changing with it. So what do you think should be the new structures, the new systems that will retain educators and get young people excited to be teachers, about the teaching profession? So a quick 30 seconds, like what are the big ideas? How should schools be changing to do those things better? AP Morado.
Dang, this is the question we get first. No. So I think that like the world is our classroom. So I think that like one of the shifts is like it's all about like thinking and filtering. And so, my gut is like we should be like out more with our students, like experiencing that. I say all the time, like if your student can look it up in their phone, like please don't spend any time teaching that. So these are things like dates and chronology, like that kind of thing. I'm just like, okay, like whatevs. And in terms of communication and language acquisition and all those things that I feel so passionately about, it definitely grows from doing, not studying. Like the studying can be in service of something else, but like, so I think those things, I think that like, I once did like a design experience that was like, what can you just like try differently in this moment? And I wish that the way that we learn to become educators was not just solely based on everything that the research says and all this planning around like creating curriculum, but was also like, try this thing, like put these two things together and see what happens. And we were like a little bit more into like flipping things on their side and seeing what happened. But again, like a whole bunch of other structures would need to change in order for that to work. But those are like my top three things, I think.
Love those things. All right, AP Arranz, change the education system, put wellness at the center.
We need to become innovators. I always say that I'm an edupreneur, and it's because I remember when I received a fellowship with City Bridge, and I was blessed to go around the country seeing the most innovating schools. We need more flexibility. We cannot continue 5 days with these times. And I'm sorry, if I was in charge of changing the schooling, everybody will be in trouble because I will change it to 4 days. And I'm not saying that because I know families and I'm a mom. Will be, what about the 5th day? The 5th day can be, like Morado is saying, enrichment. We can bring so many amazing resources to the schools that are not happening right now. Stop focusing on only testing and testing. Stop on just going by the book. I think that we need more tailored coaching, more individual training, more flexibility on timing, more wellness, and maybe reduce the schedule as it is. People feel micromanaged. People feel that they are drowning in paperwork, and I don't see people happy. I'm extremely concerned after COVID, what I'm seeing in education, and we have in our hands any and every profession. Like all the doctors are now in our schools, engineers, everybody. And I don't see motivated kids. I don't see motivated educators. Why we are going to continue the same thing and then expect different results? I think we need to be edupreneurs and change what we're doing, like any other areas, like see any other jobs, other professions have evolved. Why we haven't?
Amen.
Yeah, we talked to so many people in education, and we cannot name a person who's like, I love this system. The system is super working for me, but it is. It's like all of us coming together and starting to say it and think of new ideas. And I love the being innovators. And I do think what I've heard in this conversation, what I know to be true, is that wellness is a great way to guide us through this. That is, if we can focus on the whole human being and the wellness that we each need, that we can figure out the systems that support that. So with that, for our last question here, again, lightning round, like what is the one self-care habit or mindset that you really feel like has sustained you through your career in education? And we'll go to you first, AP Arranz.
16 years of yoga. I do yoga every day at 5:30, 6 a.m. For me, it's like breathing. And I'm going to say that it saves my life. When I'm stressed, is working out. I do exercise. I meditate and I journal. I'm a woman of faith too, so I pray. But these are the ways I get myself going and going. I'd rather have a walking meeting than sending a text message. So I don't mind going down and I get my steps in the school. So if I need to see a Scott downstairs, I avoid the Teams message and I will go and see you. So I'm killing two birds with the same stone and checking on you and I'm giving you a message. I try very hard to practice being calm, even when the school is on fire. So I can model by example that breathing is a tool, because sometimes, it's so much noise around that we're not listening to ourselves, which is the breathing and the power of breathing. This is one of the things. I use fidgets. Yes, I do. Probably I wasn't diagnosed, but I'm a person who cannot be sitting down for long periods. So my teachers know that. I love my fidget. And when someone sees me doing this a lot, it's because maybe that meeting is a little tense. I'm a foodie, but I love good nutrition. So I love good eating. I try to fast for 16 hours, and I'm just sharing everything I do that keeps me very healthy and active and energized. Good reading. I'm finishing Kingsman, and everybody should read that novel. It's beautiful. And I always read something that's to do with leadership. Like, for example, now I'm reading the influence of the psychology of the influence, how psychology you can influence on people. And traveling. I love traveling. I have a problem with Wanderlust. I already booked my trip for this spring break. So everybody, if you can take your spring break, I'm going to Mallorca. When I feel like I'm going to throw the towel, I decide to throw it on the beach. So I'm going to the beach and throwing my towel there before I lose it. And I try to enjoy always my family, my partner, the love of my life, my two kids, and my people, my healthy village. And again, it's not your village. Your village must be healthy, and that's the way that you can move forward and help others.
So inspiring. Thank you.
My self-care is a work in progress. I would say that the practice that has probably been most sustaining is breathing. I stay pretty calm. I am like connect to my breath a lot during the day, all the time. And I also like feed the mind. So like commutes and things like that. I'm always listening to stories. Like I sort of love to be transported, and that's like sort of like my escape and like the brain rest. So novels and breath work are for the last 24 years probably the most consistent self-care habits. And then, I found yoga in college and I love it, but I can't say that it's all the time. It's not every day at 5:30, that's for sure. But we can aspire.
Yes, yes. So many inspiring ideas there. And thank you for all of that. And you're about to go back into busy days. I'm sure our listeners are too. Maybe let's take a breath together before we end the podcast here.
I would love it.
Breathe in, hold it, and out. I know everyone's about to step back into the chaos, but I hope they're filled with a lot of inspiration. You are amazing human beings and amazing leaders, and the students and educators of DC are very lucky to have you. We are so lucky to have your voices on the podcast today, and thank you for all the work that you're doing, and we'll see you next time.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Bye.